Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Tirez sur le Pianiste, known in English as Shoot the Pianist, which I saw last night at the Kino Babylon and which was released on November 25, 1960. This film was written and directed by François Truffaut. It was co-written by Marcel Mussy. It was based on the novel written by David Goodis, known as Down There. The cinematographer was Raoul Coutard. The music was composed by Georges Delerue. It was edited by Claudine Boucher and Cécile Tecougy, and it starred the talents of Charles Aznavour, Marie Dubois, Nicole Berger, Michel Mercier, Serge Tavry, Claude Mansart, Richard Canayan, Albert Remy, Jean-Jacques Asselin, Daniel Boulanger, Claude Ayman, Alex Joffre, Bobby Lapointe, and Catherine Lutz. Now, I basically stumbled across this film by complete chance because I mainly knew about Charles Aznavour, all thanks to his lengthy career as a singer and an actor, and he's been very well known all around the world for his interpretations of different pop songs, ballads, and chansons. Now, I have also followed his career for quite some time, and I've also realized how prolific he truly was, not only in his native France, but around the world. And by the time I caught Shoot the Pianist, which I was really surprised that this was based on an American novel, I have to say that my impression of this film was positive all around. Story-wise, this follows the tale of a washed-up pianist known as Charlie Colère, original name Edouard Savoyen, who is trying to make it as a pianist, first at a bar and then as an internationally renowned pianist. Things have taken a turn for the tragic when his young wife committed suicide, and he's also in the run from two hitmen while also performing in a bar via his stage name. Intertwining with Charlie's tale are his brothers, Chico, Richard, and Fido, who are also being pursued by the two hitmen in the forms of Momo and Ernest. So what I've noticed from how the story was presented is that it is a non-linear structure, which also showed that there were some parts of the story that didn't really follow a traditional narrative, but it was nonetheless a very thrilling ride to get myself into. It was a nice combination of black comedy, crime drama, and even pure drama. And let me tell you that all goes south in the ending for some of the protagonists. So while there were some moments where there was some subtle, witty black comedy to be found, there were times that there was also some shocking drama to be found in the story. So I was really intrigued by what this nonlinear story had to offer. The cinematography also deserves a lot of mention, as it was also the French New Wave cinema, so that means that you can expect this grainy quality to be had when the cameras are shot in terms of their subjects, and you can also expect it to have this feeling of realism all the way through. So there were times that it did manage to leave me in a sense of following the characters and what they're doing, what their situations are. And let's also not forget that this was shot in black and white to also give a sort of bleak feeling of what the characters are going into, especially that of Charlie and his brothers, and even the women that he meets. The music also deserves some special mention. You really have to give it up to Charles Aznavour, who managed to play the piano so well and so masterfully. But aside from him and his masterful skills as a pianist as well as an actor, we also had the pleasure of having Bobby Lapointe singing Framboise, in which he was able to use his baritone voice to the greatest of his abilities. And there was also a sort of love-hate song that was playing on the radio during Charlie's and Lena's escape from the two hitmen. So the music was really interesting as it managed to combine classical pieces with jazz numbers. But one particular piece of music that was really dominant is the piano, especially considering that Charles Aznavour's character plays it and we get to hear some classical pieces and some jazz numbers being played on there. The characters are quite fascinating. Now, what I've noticed about Charlie's character is that he's quite different from the novel. In the novel, Charlie basically comes off as confident, very sure of himself, and has a very strong personality. The film's Charlie, whose real name is Edouard Sarayan, is reserved, calm, taciturn, pensive, and most of all, according to what the press says, shy, in which he's also trying to get some self-help books in order to conquer his fear of being shy in front of everyone. I think this change was rather interesting because it managed to show a fragile yet human side of Charlie. Sure, he's very professional as a pianist, and sure, he has a pretty strong personality in terms of how he manages to keep focused and how he manages to ensure that everything does not fall apart. But at the same time, you get to see this type of vulnerability in Charlie, which managed to permeate with him throughout the film. And that type of vulnerability is what he has as a character, and that's what makes him quite fascinating, yet all the more relatable to watch. Then we also go to his brother Chico, who is quite giddy in his own special way, and he has this type of dark sense of humor which makes him all the more likable and quite interesting and fun as a character. Richard is also quite likable in terms of being calm and rather laid back among the brothers. Finally, we have Fido, who could basically pass as Charlie's, Chico's, and Richard's nephew, or even one of their sons, by the way he is and how he is also the youngest among this quartet. He basically comes off as a smart-ass, mouthy kid who is quite independent and who's quite resilient, and at the same time shows a lot of toughness even when he gets kidnapped by the two hitmen. Speaking of the two hitmen, we have Ernest and Momo. Now, you might think that just by the way they look, you might think that they might come off as nothing more than comedic villains. And while they have their moments of comedy, especially in terms of how they interacted with Lena and Charlie, they are quite threatening, and they are the definitions of do not judge a book by its cover, because even though they may not look threatening on the outside, they can really show that they mean business once they get their handguns out of their pockets just to threaten to kill you and ensure that you have a hefty ransom on your head. So they are quite threatening in their own special way, and they do it with subtlety. Out of all the female characters in this film, Lena is the one we follow the most, because we get to see her in the beginning of the film working in a bar, and she is the girl who Charlie has a lot of intimate moments with and a lot of personal moments with. She's basically resourceful, smart, and quite independent, and even though she's a lot younger than Charlie, their chemistry is quite palpable. Then when we go to Therese, she starts off as a young and lovely waitress who is also quite a fan of Charlie's rapports with her. That is until they get married and she loses all of that youth and vivacity that once made her lively, and she becomes a lot more depressed, all thanks to Edouard's or Charlie's piano career. And because of all that, she even stated that she had an affair with the impresario, thus making her jump to her death, which is quite sad because she was quite fascinating as a character, but nonetheless, the impact that she left on me as the viewer was really something. Clarisse may not get a lot of screen time, but from what I can see in this character, is that she is rather independent and an overall feisty young woman who is unafraid to speak her mind and be independent. Lars Schmale, the impresario, comes off as professional and someone who is rather supportive of Edouard's career as a pianist and who wants to make sure that he is on the right path. that is until tragic circumstances arise that they kind of lose contact with each other. Then we also have Pline. Now, while he may seem rather open and professional and very welcoming to his customers, deep down there are moments in which he can be quite the traitor and quite vile and mean as a character. He even rats out Charlie and his brothers out to the two assassins, and let's just say that he is a nice definition of a two-faced character. So overall, the characters are really interesting and fun to watch, especially Charlie Colère, aka Edouard Soroyan, who we mainly follow all throughout the film, and it also helps that his inner monologues give him a lot more depth and meaning to his character and the situations he gets himself into, thus making him all the more lovable and all the more interesting to watch. The acting is just as great. Charles Aznavour is the master of how much charisma and charm and lovability he gives to Charlie, aka Edouard. What he does with this character is wonderful. He was able to inject him with so much humanity and so much relatability that I was immediately hooked by his performance. What he was able to do was make all the subtleties of Charlie come alive, thus making him a very well-rounded and very fascinating enigma of a character. Special kudos also has to go to the actors who played his brothers, and those are Albert Remy, who managed to use his comedic timing rather well, and who also injected this character with a lot of lovability. Jean-Jacques as Richard, as he was able to exude a lot of charm and likability with his character, and Richard Canaillon as Fido, who managed to make him quite rambunctious and fun-loving and smart as a character, thus making his performance quite the standout and thus making him come alive as a young actor who was able to pull it off so well. The beautiful yet ill-fated Nicole Berger managed to do right by making Thérèse's metamorphosis from young flighty waitress to long-suffering wife who has a very tragic fate just all the more believable. You can definitely see how well she was able to pull it off. With Thérèse as the waitress, she managed to make her young, flighty, smart-mouthed, and absolutely charming. And with Thérèse as the suffering wife, she had poise, dignity, and that pain and longing that she managed to pull off, thus making her performance so multifaceted, even though her character was rather thankless. Marie Dubois as Lena used her charming, great looks, youthful countenance, and gorgeous figure to make Lena come alive as a character. What she managed to do as Lena was so phenomenal. She was able to make her resourceful, independent, and also tender towards Charlie. And the chemistry she had with Charles Aznavour was so palpable. You could have sworn that these two should have ended up married by the beginning of this film. And I totally believed them as a couple, even though Charles Aznavour is, let's say, 10 years older than Marie Dubois as Lena. But age differences aside, I can totally buy their chemistry and I can totally buy their relationship as a couple. Michel Mercier managed to give Clarisse's fiery, independent nature and make her quite a fascinating and equally lovable character to witness. Serge Davry oozes with that slimy nature that he gives to Pline, but also counterbalancing that with how two-faced he can be as a character. And we also have Claude Mansart and Daniel Boulanger, who worked off of each other so wonderfully as the two hitmen. Their chemistry, their timing, and how they worked off of each other were absolutely amazing. And it's all thanks to how they managed to make these two gentlemen both threatening and quite darkly humorous in their own special way. Claude Ayman as Lars Schmale managed to give him an air of dignity and an air of professionalism, and he managed to do a great job embodying this rather minor character. We also had such equally wonderful performances accomplished by Alex Chauffret, Bobby Lapointe, and Catherine Lutz. Now I have to give it to Bobby Lapointe because every time I heard him sing, and every time he managed to get up on stage to sing his songs, I just felt so enamored watching him because of how much charm he was able to give to the singer. So overall, this was definitely quite an experience I had with this non-linear story of a film. The performances were an absolute joy to witness, especially that of Charles Aznavour as Charlie Colère, aka Edouard Soroyan, and the other actors managed to do an equally amazing job, and everything about it just brimmed with such brilliance. And I have to give this film a well-deserved rating of 5 out of 5 stars. This is an absolute must-watch if you are a fan of non-linear stories, and if you are a fan of great piano music, and of course, if you are a fan of Charles Aznavour as an actor, a pianist, and a musician. You will definitely not regret this in any shape or form. And for those of you who watched Tirez sur le Pianiste at the Kino Babylon or wherever you watched it, what'd you think of it? Did you really love Charles Aznavour's performance as the title hero? Was there another actor who you thought managed to do just as an amazing job as he did? Or did you feel like there was something about it that was not quite right? Comment below and let me know. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in much later for another review. So until then, have a great day, everybody.